Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum is accusing the Trump administration of violating the Mexican Constitution, as well as engaging in serious human rights violations in Mexico by airing these horrific discriminatory ads featuring Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in Mexico, by the way, in English, where she harasses the Mexican people. It's a really despicable video, and the Trump regime bought these advertising spots with our taxpayer dollars in the United States in Mexico to harass, intimidate, and mock the Mexican people. So Claudia Sheinbaum spoke out powerfully against that. I want to show that to you. I also want to talk about the fact that President Claudia Sheinbaum, very popular president in Mexico, also announced yesterday that a deal had not been struck with the United States regarding Donald Trump's tariffs against Mexico and the world, where Donald Trump breached the prior trade deal that Trump negotiated in 2019 with Mexico and Canada that updated NAFTA, and it was called the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the United States-US-Mexico MCA, and Donald Trump is in breach of that. It's interesting because Donald Trump had been bragging that it would be easy for him to do a deal with countries like Mexico, with countries like Japan, but notably both Mexico and Japan did not enter deals with Donald Trump, and they said, we're just very confused even what the Trump regime is trying to even retrade and do here. We have deals. Like similarly, Japan negotiated a trade deal with the Trump administration in 2019. So they're like, why would we go back on the deal that we already negotiated? Also, you're attacking our integrity and our honor. A third piece of data I want to talk about that's not getting nearly enough attention right now is the fact that Claudia Sheinbaum's come out very powerfully against the president of Ecuador, someone by the name of Daniel Noboa. Now, President Noboa of Ecuador just purportedly won re-election. He became the president in 2023. He purportedly won in a runoff just very recently. But his opponent, Luisa Gonzalez, is claiming that this election was riddled with fraud and that Trump was involved in election interference in Ecuador to help Noboa win the most recent election to prop up a Bukele, Javier Milei, Milei's from Argentina, Bukele's from El Salvador, and now Noboa from Ecuador to prop up a kind of Trump proxy right-wing authoritarian regime, kind of pro-Russia leading authoritarian thing. So one of the speeches that Claudia Sheinbaum gave in the past 24 to 48 hours is she basically said, I don't believe Noboa's election is legitimate. Noboa is attacking and threatening the sovereignty of Mexico. Noboa's regime previously invaded the Mexican embassy in Ecuador in 2024 to try to capture Ecuadorian people that the authoritarian regime was trying to crack down on as part of its crackdown on democracy. So powerful words from Sheinbaum attacking Ecuador for attacking the sovereignty of Mexico, which is really a proxy of Trump working with Noboa in order to attack Mexico. So Sheinbaum saying, I know what's up. Noboa took a trip. This did not get enough attention anywhere in the United States media, but we cover it here on the MeidasTouch network. So this authoritarian right-wing leader in Ecuador, Noboa, took a trip to Mar-a-Lago back on like March 30th and March 31st, met with the whole Mar-a-Lago crew. We've got pictures of that in Mar-a-Lago. And then many people believe basically returned with the message, here's what we're going to do. Instituted a crackdown right before the election was to take place. Remove the security detail of Luisa Gonzalez, the opponent in the election. Also basically declared not quite martial law, but an example of something kind of near a martial law type condition, saying that there was all of these threats to the government. or intimidating people. And then one of the things that was used in the Ecuador election to scare people is that Trump's going to send people, Ecuadorians, who live in the United States to concentration camps in El Salvador unless you vote for Noboa, who will protect the Ecuador community in the United States based on his relationship with Trump. So Bukele's concentration camp prison being used in Ecuador by its authoritarian kind of right-wing leader, Noboa, in order to scare people who live in Ecuador, who have family in the United States, to vote for Noboa to avoid Ecuador people from being, Ecuadorians living in the United States from being targeted by the Trump regime. So let's break this down in a little bit of detail. First, I just want to show you the ad. It's crazy that the Trump, and it is very discriminatory, and it's in English, that the Trump regime is running in Mexico, and literally hundreds of thousands, millions of people living in Mexico reported this to the government because it's just horrific. And it's Kristi Noem. I mean, this is some North Korea style crap. Kristi Noem gets on and she's like, first off, I would like to thank Donald Trump, the president, the greatest of all time. And then they go and just, it's like an incredibly racist, horrific video towards Mexico. Here, watch this.
I'm Kristi Noem, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security. Thank you, President Donald J. Trump, for securing our border and putting America first. Let me deliver a message from President Trump to the world. If you are considering entering America illegally, don't even think about it. Let me be clear. If you come to our country and you break our laws, we will hunt you down. Criminals are not welcome in the United States. For too long, weak leadership has left our borders wide open, flooding our communities with drugs, human trafficking, and violent criminals. Well, those days are over. Under President Trump, we are defending American families and restoring their safety. If you try to enter illegally, you will be caught, you will be removed, and you will never return. Follow the law, and you'll find opportunity. If you break it, you'll find consequences. Strong borders mean a stronger America. President Trump is making America safe again.
All right. Now let me share with you the speech that President Sheinbaum gave, addressing the discrimination and the human rights violations that's taking place. And she invoked Article 1 of the Mexican Constitution, which characterizes this as a human rights violation to treat people living in Mexico this way, and for foreign nations to intrude with propaganda like this. Foreign ad propaganda, would be a violation of basic tenets of Mexico's constitution. Here, play this clip.
President, have you been able to observe the spots that the United States government began broadcasting on open television as part of an advertising campaign against undocumented migration to curb irregular entry?
This announcement, therefore, has a very discriminatory content. Hi, the CONAPRED, the Ministry of the Interior, sent this letter, the National Council to Prevent the Discrimination has received citizen complaints related to the video released by the United States Department of Security, which has been aired on television as well as in various media and refers to migrants. We have found that the spot contains a discriminatory message that violates human dignity and may encourage acts of rejection or violence towards people in situations of mobility. For this reason, we invite you to have the spot removed in order to fulfill the construction of a society without discrimination as established by our Constitution. In 2014, there was an article that said, "The concessionaires and permit holders of broadcasting and television in the country will not be allowed to broadcast political, ideological, or commercial propaganda of foreign governments or entities, nor allow the media operating under their concession to be used for purposes that can influence the country's internal affairs." That article was eliminated in 2014. From now on, we hope that the communication sent by CONAPRED will raise awareness among the media, and in any case, it will be included again in the law. It is part of the reforms we will send.
Right, so that's what she said there. now that you have the background of what's going on in Ecuador, and by the way, in Ecuador, Luisa Gonzalez is claiming that the election was fraudulent. Luisa Gonzalez claims that Noboa rigged the election and cheated in the election, and that, this all started with this green light that he got during his visit to Mar-a-Lago. And it was all part of this plan. And you'll see what President Claudia Sheinbaum says about Ecuador. But when you watch this and listen to this, I want you to understand it within the geopolitical context of also relationships between Mexico and the United States, because Trump propped up Ecuador, which is attacking Mexico, and Sheinbaum knows what's going on. That's what she's saying here. Play this clip.
We, to begin with, we do not have relations with Ecuador, nor will we continue to have relations with Ecuador as long as Noboa holds the position of president, because he was responsible for the invasion of the embassy in Mexico, violating our sovereignty. So the relations are not, those are not going to resume. They will not be resumed because he is responsible for the invasion of the embassy. So relations will not be resumed. And moreover, his victory was very doubtful, particularly recognized by the OAS itself. Not even, it's another international organization. And the other candidate, well, they are saying there was fraud. So, on our part, no, relations with Ecuador will not be resumed. There are conditions for that to happen, and to begin with, they have a person detained who was inside the embassy. We will soon invite the foreign minister to discuss this. So, yesterday, Colombia, Petro said he couldn't recognize Noboa as president of Ecuador, and we, well, already have relations suspended.
And now here's Sheinbaum in a speech that she just gave also talking about people from Mexico, who her opposition, who she says are basically propping up the Ecuador regime, or trying to help the Ecuador regime as well in order to undermine Sheinbaum. And one of the messages that Sheinbaum sends here, which to me is also a message to the Trump regime and anybody who tries to take the support of the Trump regime to undermine Mexico's sovereignty, is she goes, I'm going to call you out as a traitor. Here, play this clip.
Difference with a betrayal. The letter where Carranza states is famous. The presence of troops in an independent and sovereign country is an unjustified invasion because there can be no right against the right of territorial inviolability. Moreover, it must be very much considered that if a politician to achieve the success of their cause relies on an invasion, foreign, even if it is partial, there is a failure to fulfill their duties to the homeland. It is that simple and profound, because I say it loudly and clearly. Only those who betray their country are in favor of seeking help abroad to solve the internal problems in our country.
So I think it's important that we tied that all together right there. So the headline in the United States was merely Mexico has yet to do the deal with Trump. Dig deeper, talk about Mexico-Ecuador relations and Sheinbaum not recognizing any diplomatic relations with Ecuador, as long as Noboa is the leader, but also connecting that to Noboa's visit to Mar-a-Lago. And then you got to connect it to Bukele in El Salvador, Ecuador, Argentina, Javier Milei. And then where's a lot of this coming from? Also, Russia, Vladimir Putin, who wants to influence Latin American politics in that way and gain a foothold there. And then also some of the competing interests of, then you have China and China's influence. But the point here also is that Trump is just all over the place, but, with this authoritarian bent, while there's people actually moving the chess pieces, Donald Trump is basically playing his authoritarian checkers. Anyway, hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers, and thanks for watching.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.MeidasTouch.com. All 100% USA union made.